In the famous words of former New York Yankees manager Joe Girardi, it's not what you want. What's going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Fanizzi, and welcome to another edition of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by DraftKings. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure you follow us on X and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to chat with us on any and all topics at hand. You can also send us fan mail with any questions you may have from the Blue Seats at gmail.com. That's from the Blue Seats at gmail.com. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. Where do we even begin this discussion, man? Because to think I said in the episode last week, if you haven't seen it, by the way, go check it out. To think I said last week that I thought the New York Rangers were better than their record showed, and so far I have been so wrong, it's not even funny. It is October 27th at the time of this recording, and the New York Rangers are currently in dead last in the Eastern Conference. Not the ideal situation you want to be in, but hey, you know what? When you play yourself in situations where you lack offensive production, you leave your goaltender out to dry yet again, and the system is just not gelling together right now under Mike Sullivan, you got quite a few questions to be asked early on in the year. I know we're only 10 games in. I'm not hitting any sort of panic button yet, but even still, there are a lot of questions to ask about this iteration of the Rangers so far, 10 games in. However, my team is not the only team that is struggling right now. I have on with me a very special guest whose team just beat the New York Rangers the other night in a 5-1 win in Calgary. He is the co-host of Flames Cast with Neil Villapiano and the co-manager of THPN. Please help me welcome on the one and only Kyle Manifold. Kyle, always a pleasure to have you on the show. How's everything with you and the family?
It's all been good, man. Just getting ready for winter, and obviously excited that hockey's back now for the last little month or so. And not the most ideal start in the world, but we'll talk about what happened last night because things got very interesting.
Yeah, definitely more so interesting for you than for me, but we'll get into that in a second. But I do want to talk about where exactly the Rangers are right now. We'll get into your Flames and their struggles as well, even though I don't blame it solely on the goaltending, but we'll get more on that later. Um, but as far as the Rangers are concerned, what I've seen 10 games in so far, yes, they have 8 points, but even still, that doesn't matter to me. You're getting points, which is great. You need them. But with the way that they're playing right now, especially coming off of two very, very frustrating losses. One against the Sharks in overtime, a 6-5 loss in a game in which, quite frankly, you should have wiped the floor with them. Let me put it to you this way. San Jose's last win prior to that game at Madison Square Garden was in March of this year. And you let them come into your building and just simply dominate you. Macklin Celebrini, I have nothing but praise for that kid. He is outstanding. He had a hat trick in that game, and props to him. He absolutely deserved it. That kid's going to have a bright future in the NHL if he doesn't have one already. However, other than him and a couple of other key young pieces there, the Sharks really don't have anything going for them. And you let them come into your building and literally dominate you from the jump. You showed literally no sign of life defensively whatsoever. Your goaltending was, I never thought I'd say it, but your goaltending was bad in that game, even though it wasn't all his fault. But your goaltending was bad in that game. Yeah, you saw Taylor Radish get a hat trick out of all people, and hey, congrats to him. Second career hat trick. You're happy for that. But even still, to the Sharks, out of all teams, one of the worst teams in the NHL, who had no wins coming into that game, and you let them walk all over your face, literally and figuratively. And then you had a situation last night, at the time of this recording, it's October 27th. Last night, the 26th, you went into Calgary, where Noah Laba, by the way, had his first NHL goal. Congrats to the young kid. Very, very promising. But you got dominated by a team who, prior to last night, had lost 8 straight games, and you let them dominate you. I don't know what is going on with this team right now, Kyle. There's a lot of questions. You can point to the lack of offensive production. You can talk about the core being disinterested. You can talk about the offensive system by head coach Mike Sullivan not gelling well enough. You could talk about the defense being lackluster. A lot of things are to blame around here, but what exactly is wrong with this Rangers team right now? I'm seeing a lot of key issues, but to you, based on what you saw last night against Calgary, what is the main issue with this Rangers team right now?
They're kind of in the same boat with Calgary, but more like again, like you saw the first 3 games of the year for the Rangers and they couldn't score. And for whatever reason, like I'm not even really looking at the 5 goals from last night from Calgary, but again, like you mentioned Noah Labe scoring for you guys, and like that was the only contributor. So you're counting 4 games this year where none, at least from my recollection here, like where none of your big stars are supposed to be doing this, right? The Panarins, why you bring in JT Miller, and the list goes on. Zibanejad, it's like, you know, we have scoring problems because we know we don't have anybody to score. You guys have scoring problems, but the problem is that you've paid lots of guys in order to do that and who have clearly shown it in the past to have been able to score. So, defensively, like you're gonna struggle and you're gonna have some nights. Like it's not always gonna be perfect, but the main issue is just the fact that, with San Jose, like going in the way that they did, and then you watch what happened last night. Like it's a collective amount of things, but I'm again leaning more towards the fact that there was just more cases this year where they're clearly not scoring, and they're not scoring at an efficient pace. And so I think, and again, you had like some of the teams early on coming in and just kind of walk all over you, and they're able to do what they want to do. There's no system in place, and when you look at them on paper, they're just a team, right? They're not necessarily showing it on the ice, but they're a team on paper, not any sort of systematics on the ice. And the same thing can kind of be said about the Leafs too, because of their early struggles and that nobody's gelling well together either. So, a lot of it comes down to chemistry, but at the end of the day, your star players have to go out and score. And, it doesn't matter if it's on a Tuesday night in October, you got to be able to put the puck in the net somehow.
I think the fact that they have struggled to score at home, despite the fact that you netted 5 against San Jose, which that was a great sign. I'll give them that. But other than that, you have failed to not just score at home, but you're winless at home too, which is also a major concern because good teams are supposed to win at home. I get it. The Rangers have had an excellent road record, and that's all well and good. But if you're going to compete for a Stanley Cup, you got to win at home. And so far, the Rangers, I don't know if it's a combination of two things for me. It's bad puck luck, and the opposing goaltending in particular has somehow, some way figured out how to play at MSG, because Madison Square Garden used to be a house of horrors for a lot of teams. And now all of a sudden they're coming in there and they're just mowing down this particular Rangers team left and right all over the ice. Puck is bouncing all over the place. So I don't know if the other team is just that good or if the Rangers are just this bad right now, but I'm going to lean more towards the latter here and say it's a combination of both. But if you had to ask me about if it's one or the other, I would probably say that, in all honesty, this team, as presently constructed, is not a good hockey team right now.
And don't forget too, like when you look at it's a lesson like from when we learned from Vegas and a lot of these bigger markets, they don't have time to do a full roster rebuild. If this is the direction that it continues to go, and especially last year, halfway through the year, as we saw them kind of slide down and they had the biggest difference in terms of playoff or positioning there in the East. So you don't have a lot of time to rebuild because of the market that you're in, right? When you are
Right.
in place like a Utah or Calgary in this instance here, like you're more persistent to getting butts in seats, getting people to buy your merch, all this kind of stuff. And Luck so had it at the time when they had Lafreniere and you pay him, and now you're seeing Panarin in the last year of his deal. We'll see what happens with him, but
Yep.
you got like 5 or 6 guys that you've paid a hefty amount to with JT and Trocheck and Zibanejad, and the list goes on. So like, you don't have that time. Like the ownership at the very least won't allow a rebuild if this season goes off the rails, right? They'll go and they'll market whatever top name goes into the offseason here, and they could very well take the same approach here as Vegas, and it's just going to get guys, who at free agency or at the deadline who are just going to help you. And it doesn't matter where you are. And if you're 5 points out, 10 points out, they're, expect a team like New York here to make a big move because, that's just who they are. And that's just kind of the market that they're in. That's the market that Vegas is in. And, it's a lot of these big markets, especially in the US, that really don't want to waste time to do this whole rebuild here for years on end because you're going to lose interest and you're going to lose fans along the way. And you can't have that as an owner.
Speaking of the GMs and ownership, that was kind of going to lead me into my next topic here. Is that everybody wants the head of Chris Drury so bad. And I totally understand why that is because on paper, you think, oh, this is a team that can automatically compete for a Stanley Cup. They're probably going to go to the Eastern Conference Final again. But then you see the final product on the ice so far, 10 games in, and you're like, ooh, maybe this is not the team that we envisioned Chris Drury building after all. So would it surprise me at all if he got fired towards season's end? At this point, no, it wouldn't. But the real question is, does he deserve to? And
No,
I don't know how to answer that. I'm gonna lean more towards no, but look, only because it's not just on the GM to build a team. You gotta have some help. So it should be the people around him who take responsibility. It shouldn't solely be on one person. It's a group effort. And look, I get it. Chris Drury makes the final decision, but even still, this shouldn't just be on Chris Drury. So does he deserve to be fired? No, but would it surprise me? Absolutely not.
well, he's going to be used as a scapegoat because you remember, like, in the couple of runs that they've had in the past couple of years, the bulk of the guys are still there. The Foxes of the
Yes.
world, the Panarins of the world, like the Shesterkins, like the bulk is there. And nothing is, changed as of major significance. Maybe whatever, you ship out Kreider and True. We're talking two guys here, but it shouldn't shape the whole dynamic of the team where you're finding yourself in this position that you're in. So, I mean, he's going to be used as a scapegoat regardless at the end of the
Well,
day.
see,
But
let me stop you right there, Kyle, and I apologize for cutting you off. See, that's where I sort of slightly disagree with you on the Kreider thing. Truba, I kind of agree with you with, but as far as Kreider is concerned, I just feel like the Rangers are missing that guy who can be a front net presence. Kreider was that guy, and now that he's no longer there, they don't have that guy. Yeah, Will Cooley can be that guy, but he's struggling all year long. He can't be that guy. You don't trust him. They sure as hell miss Vincent Trocheck. He's been out for a while. And not to mention the injury bug is really hurting the Rangers. They lost Matt Rempe. They lost Trocheck. So they're missing that guy who can be a front net presence. And they had him in Kreider, and they decided to let him go.
fair. It's also on the other side of the coin that he's also thinking long term because Kreider, for the most part, has run its course, right? And he's given you a lot of success for a good chunk of years, whether, deep in the playoff, however you want to look at it. It's a lot of playoff appearances more than a lot of the other teams have seen it, Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're kind of looking down the line here, and he's trying to, a part of it was you have to save considering what he's making, right? Like, there are some of the younger guys he needed to sign Lafreniere, right? Regardless of how people feel about him, you have to keep that big name in the market, however people may feel about that as well. But also too, like, it does turn into, if this team is going to be even if they can find a little bit to be around 500, we're 10 games into the year so far, so a lot can be played out here. They find themselves around 500, they're going to go out and use their assets as they can, whether it be draft picks or prospects or whatever, to go find another rental bigger name to try and push this team in because they want to find a way in. So no, I'm not disagreeing you. I think it was a big loss losing Kreider. I also think that he's kind of just looking at it from a long-term perspective and going, well, would I rather be paying him right now and, trying to see what the team can do in the short term? Or am I going to go out there and get a bigger fish and maybe somebody has a bad contract like, I don't know, Nazem Kadri, who's got 4 years left on his deal on a $7 million contract? And is that somebody who becomes available now that he has a 13-team no trade? I'm just using him as an example, but he's kind of thinking down the line as, he served his purpose, but now there's a replacement to come into play at some point who can help maybe more offensively.
Hockey is back, and this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, brings you all the speed, skill, and nonstop action you love. DraftKings Sportsbook delivers the unmatched intensity of the NHL right to your fingertips. From player props to the thrill of live in-game betting, every drop of the puck is your shot to win big. Now, there's a lot of stuff to look at this season. Maybe you like Connor McDavid to win the Hart Trophy at plus 250. Maybe you like the Carolina Hurricanes to win the Stanley Cup at plus 750. Whatever you want to bet on, make sure you do it with DraftKings. And new customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. Light the lamp all season long with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, pass-through or per-wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright NHL 2025. All rights reserved.
Yeah, and so far the Rangers have been struggling to find that replacement for Kreider as a front net guy. But you do make a fair point there. But look, man, it's just been really. It went from watching them actually losing is one thing, but when you go from 5 games into the year, watching them compete as hard as they are, going, oh wait a minute, they're actually looking really, really good, despite the fact that they're in their these close games and not scoring at home. That part is one thing, but it's another thing. 10 games in, where now you're starting to see shades of last year's team all over again. And now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, Lafreniere is not the #1 overall pick that we've seen. Time to get rid of him. Don't re-sign Panarin. Zibanejad's got to get cut. And I'm like, look, there's no need to hit a panic button right now. It's only 10 games into the year. Can we relax? Look, I think this team, I said they're going to be a wild card team at the end. I don't expect them to be a top 3 team this year in the Metro. You see what New Jersey's doing, and that also makes it even more frustrating for the Rangers. You have a team across the Hudson and the New Jersey Devils who have not only won 8 straight games, but are 5-0 at home, and they're mowing down these teams left and right, including the defending champion Florida Panthers. And look, it's frustrating to watch as a Ranger fan. And look, it's frustrating for me personally, but I'm sure Neil is freaking over the moon right now with how his team is playing. And Devils are going to be in a top 3 team when the season's over. But look, the Devils have to come back down to earth eventually. And I want to believe at some point the Rangers are going to get better. But if for some reason this keeps up and we have the same repeat of last year, then that's the point where I say, hey, you know what? Maybe you have to look at a contract like Lafreniere's and say, was it a good decision? Do you even bother re-signing Artemi Panarin to maybe a 1 or 2 year contract? What do you do with Zibanejad and his no-move clause? Like, the core to me just seems disinterested, and people are already questioning the captaincy of JT Miller, and I don't think that's fair. I mean, it's only 10 games into his captaincy. I'm going to say relax on that, but I get why all these points are being made. Yes, it's frustrating. I get what you're feeling right now out there, but can we all just try to take a chill pill and relax? I feel like everything's going to be fine at the end. I still think they'll be a playoff team. It's just really frustrating times right now. That's all.
2 things. The Jets did this last year where they won whatever it was, 12, 15 games in a row, right? And it was great for them. They exceeded up to the #1 seed, and you still end up losing in the playoffs. So, you do come back down to earth, and it only pushed the pipe, push the needle down a little further for them to get in. And then, playoff hockey's a different story. But
Right.
also, too, like just rattling off some names in the East, like the Penguins being 6-2-1. There was I looked at last year with Anaheim, and they were at one point in the top, close to the top of the division, and then they fell back down to earth.
Yep.
So it's only a matter of time for teams looking at Pittsburgh, Detroit being 6-3. How much longer is that going to last? You got the Islanders at 4-3-1. How much longer is that going to last? So, but also too, for teams like Ottawa and Toronto being at 500 here, Tampa being around 500 as well, are they going to kick it into another gear? So you're going to find out in the next month or two, are the teams like the Penguins and the Red Wings going to come back down to earth a little bit and, show who they are identity-wise? And some of these other teams like, yourself and the Lightning and everybody else, they're going to find a way to try to, it's a longevity game, right? It's a long-term game here. And so again, like you said, you're 10 games in, you can't stress about it. And, things happen early on. Doesn't matter. Like you can still, like, you're not looking at where they're at. I mean, okay, you're at 8 points. You're 4 points back of a playoff spot, and we're 10 games into the season. So things happen early on. You have stretches to, the year, whether it's now or in February, and, things can happen.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. But now let's get to your team, shall we? Who just beat my team 5-1 in really just dominating fashion. Let's just call it what it is. You guys deserve that win. Congratulations. But look, despite that, your team has also struggled. But at least you know that you don't have that big name guy other than Nazem Kadri, who has been a great addition in my opinion. Who else do you have? I don't want to blame all the struggles against your team on Dustin Wolf. I think Dustin Wolf is doing everything that he can to try and help his team win. It's not his fault that the team around him is just absolutely abysmal right now. But what do you think the main culprit is with your Flames right now? Why are they in dead last in the Western Conference? Like, what's going on with them?
Well, I mean, an example was last night sitting Coronado in the game, because it was not necessarily a punishment, and Huska was mentioning it too, where they were just kind of like, we're not punishing the guy. He was just, there's a lot of guys on the forward group that are just, they feel like they have to try so hard while having this kind of losing skid, and they're having the pressure and the weight of the world on them, and it's kind of just like, just sit, watch the game for a minute, and let's get back to it, right? So for people freaking out about it last night is utterly ridiculous, and they want Huska's head is the stupidest thing ever, because some guys just need a game. They need to sit and just watch for a minute and understand, okay, like, this is what I have to do instead better, right? So you can look at it two ways, and that's the way Coronado is going to end up looking at it. So, but overall, like, the team can't score, and it was the same thing last year, but the only reason why they were good last year was because they were able to defensively keep it low scoring enough, and then to also have Dustin Wolf play the way that he has. So there's not much different the way Dustin Wolf is playing. It's just defensively structured. You're trying new guys coming into the fold here, with Zane Parekh being a top core guy. He's only 19 years old. So he's kind of getting physically dominated out there right now, which, it's going to happen to you. So a lot of the guys, the younger defensemen who are playing really well now, are 21, 22 years old. So you have to give them a bit of time there. But yeah, overall, it hasn't surprised any of us. They just can't score. They don't have a lot of the big names that can score. But at the end of the day, we are thrilled with this start. A good chunk of Flames fans are really, really happy with this start, because we're finally picking a direction instead of being somewhere in the middle. So now that this is happening, it's going to be a really good draft class coming up this year, without Gavin McKenna being the sole star here. This is the time to do it. You're going to have some time here to get rid of Anderson. Now, Kadri apparently has a 13-team no trade. I think time will tell with that, and we'll see what his commitment level is going to be. But yeah, like, it's going to be like this all year, and I don't think it's surprised a lot of Flames fans.
You mentioned that they're happy about a 2-7 start. So
Yep.
I look, I don't watch this team as much as you do. I will admit that. You've been a Flames fan your whole life. So just, has it always been this way every single year, where they just don't know what direction they want to go? Because let me remind everybody, the Flames' only Stanley Cup win was what, 1989? I want to say 89.
And then
Okay.
2004 in the final. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, with that being said, ever since they won in 89, has it always been, oh, one year we're going to go this direction, another year we're going to go this direction, this year we're going to go right down the middle? Has it always been that way? It's always been like a mishmash of like, hey, we don't know where the hell we're going. It's always been that way with this team?
It's been that way because of ownership. They wanted to push playoffs every year, and they wanted to have a short rebuild, and so that's why they keep getting caught in this kind of middle here. The highest draft pick recently was Sam Bennett at 4th overall years back. I think it was maybe 2018 or something like that. That was the highest draft pick, and we see what he's doing now in Florida, and it just wasn't a fit though in Calgary. So nobody was really at fault here for Bennett. It just wasn't a good fit. Lucked out with Gaudreau being in the 3rd round, 4th round for what it was. And then the other one was Tkachuk being at 6th. So the fact that we can envision this team having a top 3 pick, potentially finishing last and being in the lottery for Gavin McKenna, is the best thing that they need right now. Because the funny thing is that they don't. I'm still a firm believer that this could be a quick turnaround because they still have a core defensively, and we need guys like Mackenzie Weegar to continue leading the team a little bit with, Perek, give him 2 years or so, and, he'll get into the fold here, and he's going to be sensational to watch. Kevin Ball, love him defensively. A few little pieces need to be moved around offensively, but, you get a superstar-like player coming up in the draft, and if you luck out with that, that's a cornerstone you can work around here, like the Celebrities of the world and the Bedards of the world. You can work around that here with McKenna, and you can go out and get guys for additional scoring. So I think what people forget is that this team I think they were last in goals for last year, and they were tied for a playoff spot. You
Yes.
add in 20, 30 goals, give or take, and this team's probably up there with the Vegases of the world. So I think a lot of the consensus, to wrap it up, is that they're not far off. They know they need goal scoring. And to have this go the way it is and to prepare for the new arena coming up in the next 2 years is best case scenario right now for this team. And the timing of it is phenomenal because you saw what they're capable of last year. And now you're just kind of paying the piper coming up into the season. So it doesn't surprise you kind of how they started, and it doesn't surprise a lot of Flames fans. But that's just kind of the year that they're going to have.
You mentioned the young guys on your team, and I guess I could ask this question in case to the young guys on the Rangers too, with Gabe Perreault, Brennan Othman, and all the guys in the AHL farm system. Do you feel like that fans put too much pressure on these young guys to do well? Because if you think about it, you had Noah Laba scoring his first NHL goal before Brennan Othman, and everybody's losing their minds. Why can't Brennan Othman do that? I feel like it's because too much pressure is being put on the young kid. It's going to take time for somebody like him to develop the right way when he's in the right system. So do you feel like there's too much pressure on all of these young players who are coming up to do well that they somehow some way struggle? And I guess the same question could be asked about, is there too much pressure on Alexis Lafreniere in a way? Because he's still young. He's 24. I know Ranger fans are frustrated with him, but do you feel like there's too much pressure here?
Yes and no, because you can have the right, I'm just going to use our teams for an example here just because they played last night. I'll use Coronado as an example here, where he spent a lot of time in the AHL after he was drafted by Calgary. And he spent a lot of time there. And as the years went on, it just got better and better and better. And he got so good in the AHL that they brought him up, and he ended up almost potting 30 goals last year. So, which is why, it doesn't help also too that you're in the size of the market that you're in, being New York, and we know that that's how they act as fans. We all know that. So yes and no. I think being in that market doesn't help because they expect greatness every time they hit the ice. And so I don't think it's fair, but at some point, you just said it, he's 24 years old, Lafreniere. When will be the time that it could work within this system? And if it doesn't, you ship him off to Utah, and all of a sudden he becomes the best player on that team, and is, all of a sudden one of the best players in the league, right? Too much of it is being paid attention to the individuality of it as well for some of these young guys, right? Where, yes, you can only look at a distinct few number of guys in the NHL, the McDavids of the world, the Dreisaitl's at the time, Crosby, when you go back in the day, Ovechkin, they took over, and you build a team around that, right? Nowadays, it's kind of shifted to, when you look at teams, the way that Florida's built, the way that Carolina's built, the way that Dallas is built, it's a collection of guys. It shouldn't be too much pressure on one guy. So Lafreniere can work on a really good team like a Dallas, et cetera, a lot of these other playoff teams because of the supporting cast. But, when you look at Lafreniere, I'm just going to use him again as an example. His game represents to me a lot like Jonathan Huberdeau, where he's not the guy to go out there and score. He's your playmaker. He's going to be your guy to hopefully set plays up and expect the other guys to go out there and score, like the Panarins of the world, which is why you pay him that much. So you're going to get that a lot. And a lot of these rookies, when they get drafted, you really have to look at what fits for their style of game, right? Are they a defensive defenseman? Are they an offensive defenseman, right? Can they pot in a couple of goals? When you look at guys like Lafreniere, he came into the league with, if you remember when he got drafted, he had a shit ton of assists coming into the league, pardon my language. And so, and then you look at guys like Bedard, all the pressure in the world's on him. Well, it was this size all of a sudden. And the fact that, again, it was the same thing where he was able to pile up a ton of assists. So you got to work to the strengths of these guys. And yes, you can build them around as cornerstone, but you need to replicate with what they have within their game to also make sure that guys like Panarin are doing their job to go out and score. So long-winded answer, but it's a tough question because it works for a bit of both ways here and what system you're kind of in.
No, it's a lot of fair points you bring up, and I guess my last question before we wrap things up here is, I expect the Rangers to eventually turn this thing around and be fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the day. What do you expect from your Flames the rest of the way? Do you expect them to turn things around?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, so the whole season was going to dictate on the first 10 games of the year. A lot of teams don't look at it that way, but we did because we had a gauntlet of a schedule. And that was going to tell us everything that we like that. Because at that point in time where we had Edmonton, Vancouver, St. Louis, Vegas back to back, a lot of the really, St. Louis made the playoffs, whatever. A lot of those teams can make the playoffs and go on deep runs, as we've seen with Vegas and Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
The schedule for us at the beginning was going to tell us everything that we needed to know because that was relevantly going to be the healthiest that we were going to have, minus a few games without Huberdeau. So because of this stretch, it tells us that they're just not good enough compared to the other healthy teams around to begin the year with the Oilers, with the Canucks, within their own division specifically. So it told us everything we needed to know, that we're just simply not there this season. So that's the direction I hope that they're going to continue to go. I hope they continue to stay last place in the NHL, but also too, you can still look at it as a productive season by, giving less games to Wolf, let him scale back a little bit and give out games to Devin Cooley and Provistev, who they signed in the offseason. Continue to get the young guys out there. I don't care if Parek's getting killed, but give him the lessons like this is what it's going to be like during a regular season, right? Getting Parek out there more, getting Coronado out there more, and just finding some sort of chemistry a little bit and not necessarily looking at it in the stat sheet, but you're looking at how can they complement their game well into the system that we're trying to build here for the future.
Kyle, I'm glad that we were able to have this venting session about both of our teams here. I think it was definitely much needed for both of us. Although we do kind of see opposite directions about our teams. I expect to turn around. You don't. And from your perspective, from what you have been through all your life, I feel like Flames fans up in the North are surprisingly very happy with that, considering they actually have a direction for once. But Kyle, before we let you go, where can people find out more about your show and where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, just on X and Instagram for Flamescast, but then more importantly, just the network. We just had a big giveaway about a week or two ago, and we're going to be doing more of that this year as well too. So just keeping an eye on that, and just some more exciting news hopefully coming up within the new year. And just continue to find us on our socials, and just make sure to listen to great shows like Jimmy and the rest of the crew.
I appreciate that, and I will leave a link down below in the description section for Flamescast, so you can listen to Kyle and Neil rant about the Flames every single week. Kyle, always a pleasure, my man. Thank you so much, and let's do it all again real soon. And hopefully, things will be better for both of our teams the next time around. Thank you so much, man.
You bet, buddy.
All right, Kyle Manifold, co-manager of THPN and co-host of Flamescast. Make sure you go subscribe to Flamescast on all audio platforms and on YouTube, and subscribe to us right here on THPN. But that's going to do it for us here on From the Blue Seats. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you saw or heard, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube and hit that bell so you're notified of all episodes that are posted, and subscribe on all audio platforms, including Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. And follow us on all social media, X, Instagram, at BlueSeats94, and use hashtag BlueSeats. And follow Hockey Podcast Network on all social media as well, at HockeyPodNet. Let's hear from you, though. Do you expect a turnaround from the Rangers and or the Calgary Flames? Where do both teams go from here? We want to hear from you. Send us fan mail as well from the Blue Seats at gmail.com. That's from the Blue Seats at gmail.com. BlueSeats.com. Alongside Kyle Manifold, my name is Jimmy. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Go Blue Shirts, and we'll catch you next time. Peace!